This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening, everybody. It's the Late Show on Sunday with your host, Toby Doncaster. And tonight, I discussed with Lou Mycroft, where is the joy in FE? It's all missing. Or is it? Let's find out. Do join us.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
And hello, I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Lou Mycroft to join me on this show tonight. We're looking at where's the joy in FE. FE has had quite a bashing over the last few years. We've had you name it. We're underpaid. We're paid less than most of the teachers out there. We're overworked. You know, there's so much going on and what we have to do. And we're definitely, struggling to make ends meet and to enjoy what we're doing. So I would really like to find out, what we could be doing to make things easier for me. And I found a couple of bits and pieces, along the way. I've spoken to quite a few people at work as well as outside, to see what we could do to make things better for ourselves. But so really, it's a question which I would like to open up to the audience. What do you do to make things better for yourselves? How do you make life happier for yourselves? And what sort of things do you think about when you think of in terms of joy, especially in the further education sector? So what I was thinking, if I'm allowed to do such a thing, really is we need to spend more time as teachers working with other teachers to and I always found that collaboration within the group, so to speak, makes things a lot easier. So what I mean by that, whereas before I used to do my mock exams on my own, for example, this was the first year, if you could believe it, where I said to somebody else, "Hey, why don't we just work together, and collaborate?" So what happened? I actually, worked with this other person so that we had a merged group. So this actually worked out that we had two teachers working together. But then, what I did next is I actually stepped in again and I said, "Look, why don't I just look after, the whole group?" So because I'm quite capable, I just did the whole group by myself. And, it worked out. So what we had was, a situation where I'm actually helping out the person who was supposed to be doing an exam alongside me. She went and did her own thing, and I just stepped in and looked after the whole group by myself. And we felt happier that we were doing this together. So that was the first step, if you like, where I actually stepped in and said to somebody else, "Why don't we work together?" So other things that I've done as well is I've started sharing materials. Now, I worked with somebody else who we met on what was called an ideas room every Friday. And what happened was they contacted me a couple of years back and said, "Do you think I could come in and see you at your college? And we could talk about, what you do in teaching GCSE English and how that works." And I said, "Yeah, that would be a great idea." So they came to see us. I got the deputy head of English to come and meet them, and we talked GCSE English for half a day, and shared materials and shared, how we actually approach the teaching of GCSE English within the class. So what happened from there was that a couple of years later, I went to see them at their college, and we yeah we have been backwards and forwarding ever since. Now, what I've noticed with the person, I'll say his name anyway, is Matthew Ruddle. Matthew has actually started blogging as well and sharing materials online. So from there, I was able to, download a couple of lessons, a couple of PowerPoints, and try them out in the class to some great success. So this idea of collaboration between teachers really helps when it comes to, you know, um, sharing the load, but also finding the joy in further education, in teaching. So rather than being a private individual, reach out there and share with other people and get to know what other people are doing. So I'm still waiting for Dr. Lou to enter the studio, as it
I
were.
think I'm here,
And
Toby.
hey, hello, how are
Yeah,
you?
I'm all right, thank you. I've got a dreaded lurgy, but I'm all right. I'm happy. I'm glad to be here. And I was just fascinated listening to you. I don't need to
Thank
say
you.
anything.
So, uh, Dr. Lou Mycroft, you're a change maker and a co-founder of #JoyFE, and you've worked in public health and social purpose, and you facilitate the National Green Change Makers program. So you're going to tell me a bit about that because I have absolutely no idea. And you enable FE practitioners to step into their joyful potential, which I also have no idea about. Um, you are a thinking environment facilitator. I've experienced that with Matthew Ruddle, and you're the vice chair of the Chesterfield College Group. So you've got quite a lot of experience within the FE sector. So welcome to the group. Welcome to the radio show. And as we always start with our practice, how are you today? Apart from the dreaded lurgy.
Oh, I'm still joyful. Don't worry about it. I've spent the afternoon on the sofa watching Come Dine with me and not having to worry about anything. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I am good in myself, as we say here in Yorkshire. How are you, Toby?
I ha I am mildly excited. My younger daughter is getting married next year, and the bridesmaids came to our house today to try out their outfits, and they have made a choice. So it's like this is really happening. My 30-year-old is getting married. I still can't believe it. It's actually going to happen. So yeah, that's quite momentous, if you know
I
what I
do.
mean.
That's absolutely
Yeah,
wonderful. Of course, neither you
yeah.
nor I are old enough to have 30-year-olds, but there you go.
So, I was talking initially about finding the joy in FE, and I suggested one thing, which is that if people get together and instead of working by themselves, then there's that moment of joy when you feel supported by somebody else, but also they they show, well, this is what happened with me and Matthew Rudder when he shared his material with me. It was like finding a different way of doing things, and I don't know how to describe it. It was almost like a spark of a spark of joy, because I'm thinking, this is a different method of solving a problem, which is, how can I help learners achieve GCSE English? What do you think? Do you think there's anything there? I mean, is is it known? I have no idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's give that spark of joy a name. Let's call it potential,
Right,
because that's what it is. And I always like roll my eyes at myself to dive straight in with the 350-year-old philosophy, but potentia as a word means power in
right.
Latin. And the philosopher Spinoza, many years ago in the Netherlands, writing in Latin, he wrote about two different kinds of power. Potestas, which is what we know of as power, hierarchy, clout, all of that. And then potential, which is exactly what you describe. And when we think about collaboration, I mean, yeah, I was in FE a long time. I worked for an FE college for nearly 20 years. And then obviously I'm still a governor. It's a different college. But I can remember collaboration being something that was enforced
Right.
by, you know, senior managers.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there were always like the usual suspects who were like always really good. So it was a bit like a punishment in a way. You go and learn from this person. But I mean, it was a place of lots of favoritism, I have to say. As
Mm,
I've got to say, sometimes I was in, sometimes I was out. So I've seen that from both sides. There's not a sour grapes here. But
sure.
but that is where collaboration comes from, potestas. Ofsted want to see that people are learning from one another and who gets to be on the peer observation team and all of this, and paired peer observations that nobody ever wanted to do, like not ever. And it wasn't an unharmonious place. I mean, it wasn't a horrible place by any means. And then the difference in what you describe between you and Matthew and a million other people, well, maybe there's not a million teachers in FE who actually have that little spark because you've been brought into encounter with one another, in this case in an ideas room, and you
Yes,
feel that little spark of potential, and then you use your power to make that happen. Now, I don't know about with you and Matthew, but I know that sometimes, like certainly when we were starting Joy FE, it was easy because it was lockdown. But
yes,
previous to that, sometimes it was quite hard for people to get permission to go and see what was happening in another organisation. And now FE does that all the time.
that's right. Yes,
FE
yes.
runs its own, it's not best practice anymore, because that's, if you put best on it, that's innately competitive. I can remember the college I worked at, we got an Ofsted outstanding grade, not for the first time. And then suddenly we were putting on all these CPD events. Oh my goodness, it was so embarrassing because it was like, oh, look at us, we're so clever. It's
Mm,
it's
mm,
not
mm.
like that. It is genuinely, let's get some people together and figure out together how we can teach GCSE English, or how we can, do more to get people using digital within the organisation. Or, in my work now, is exactly that. It's exactly the same thing. How can we get people together and release their potential to actually do some work around climate action? So
Okay,
it's almost like the locus of power is in a different place. It isn't from the hierarchy, it's from within the individual. It just makes life more interesting, doesn't it?
that's right. So you're talking. So what you seem to be describing is really collaboration within the grassroots level. So I'm doing it because I want to do it rather than it being imposed from above. Yeah, I think I'm
You
right.
are right, except that
Yeah.
everybody's welcome. So,
Yes.
it doesn't matter. I work with an incredible college up in Yorkshire, Kirklees College in Huddersfield. And the principal just comes along to the stuff because he is a wise enough man to know there's some stuff he doesn't know.
Right.
And so,
Okay.
the invitation goes out to everybody, and it's such a shame when potty staff stops people feeling that they can get involved in that as well. We don't expect everybody to know everything, do we? We've all got
No.
different skills. And
I think what happened with for me, for example, I couldn't break down this. I'd, I'd call it a barrier, so to speak. So what's happening? I'm thinking, okay, the learners I teach need to reach this certain grade, and I can't figure out the steps. How do I scaffold it so that they can reach it? And by talking to, it was a couple of people from other colleges, you know, it was weird. It was like a total new world was opened up for me, and I was like, oh, so instead of giving a whole page of text, we can give a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs. We can use comprehension questions. We can focus on the skills rather than say to the learners, okay, we're preparing for an exam. We can say this is all about the subject. What I'm saying is that because they had a different perspective, I was able to put those perspectives together and come up with my own realization of a new truth, if that
no,
makes
that makes
sense.
total sense. And what's happening there, and I'm going to talk a little bit, if I may, about the thinking environment, but
Yeah.
one of the we call them components, but sort of fundamental values of working in a thinking environment, which is just a way of getting people to do the best thinking, is diversity. Well, difference, we might call it
Yes.
these days.
Yes.
And actually, what happens if you're only, like back in the day, when certainly where I worked, you weren't really encouraged to go and learn from people. You probably never even met some other people unless you were on like some sort of professional training program or whatever. But I don't think we necessarily met people a lot. I was really lucky because I used to run the teacher training program, and I was part of the Huddersfield consortium. So it meant that lots of colleges would come together once a month. So there was a little bit of that
Mm.
sharing. And then it's the diversity, the different perspectives, isn't it, that you get? And it's that difference that is joyful and
Yes.
keeps things alive. And it also works across identities as well. So, there are all different ways in which we can be different. And if we only learn from people who, have had from our college, from our culture, maybe, in different ways have had the same upbringing as us or whatever, we're
Mm.
never going to find those different things to do.
Exactly.
And I know on the Green Changemaker program, what the Changemakers describe the thinking environment. You talked about the ideas rooms, where you met Matthew, and a lot of us met one another as part of Joy FE, and we ran those as thinking environments. And they began to describe the thinking environment as the thing that changes things, because
Right.
actually what it does is release that joy. You'll remember, Toby,
Mm.
people would come along to those sessions who were unheard in their own organisations,
Yes.
but they'd
Yeah.
seen something on Twitter, or they'd seen something on Facebook or LinkedIn, and they thought, I'm going to give this a go.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's what worked for me. I can remember it. I saw you on Twitter, and I thought, what she's got to say is fascinating. Let me find out more. And it led me to the first ideas room that I joined, gosh, so many years ago.
And it was such a liberating time, wasn't it? Because
Yes.
what had happened, because we literally founded Joy FE the day we all went into lockdown.
Oh, I see.
And it was a deliberate practice. So by this time, I'd learned my Spinoza. I was studying for my PhD. I'd been involved in a bit of a movement called the Dancing Princesses, which was about replacing that old Cinderella metaphor for FE. So
Uh-huh.
I'd been doing joyful work, and then for about 5 years, and then lockdown started. How are we going to help people keep their heads up? So
Yes.
we just did a call out, and by the end of the first day, we got a WhatsApp group and a hashtag, and we sort of took it from there. But Ideas Room started pretty quickly after that, because it was a liberated time, because actually within the colleges, the teachers just put all hands to deck.
That's right.
It was there was the potential in that, to be honest, the excitement, even though there was a lot of fear. It was people were liberated from, certainly initially, from the sort of scrutiny which had really weighed down on some people in some contexts,
Yeah.
because you just had to crack on, and it took a while for the sort of compliance side of things to catch up. So it was just a wonderful blossoming for FE, and so many different FE grassroots communities were formed in that time, or developed a new energy in that time. So I'm thinking about the FE research communities. They were absolutely enlivened by that time, because suddenly we had all these ways you could talk to different people, couldn't you? Because none of us were
That's
meeting
right.
each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. No. You were saying we we were free to do what we could to make things work, and it was like try every means possible to get things going. And Daniel Pink talks about this in Drive, where he talks about there's three components to um, having your own self motivation, and it's mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And lockdown seemed to bring about the whole thing together, because I had to figure out, right, how do I teach online? How do I teach online effectively? What could I do? What are the different components that I could bring into place? And all the time there was this purpose driven, which is that I can't let the learners down. They if they're still there, I still need to reach them. And do you think that um, revolution, if you like, do you think that's petering out now?
I can only speak about the places that I go and work. And frankly, Toby, people who do not want to work in this joyful way wouldn't get me in the first place. So there are certainly places where it's not petering out and it is accelerating, and
Oh,
particularly to consider the climate emergency and addressing that. But I think I love that Daniel Pink book. It's been a companion for many years, and I think what was happening up to that point, and probably is still happening in some places, is it's that autonomy thing that has
yes,
gone,
yes,
because I call it the first operating system. The day job. It is
yes,
so compliance driven. We should be accountable for public money, don't get me wrong,
yes,
but what it does is it squashes out all the joy. It squashes out that self-responsibility, self-accountability, autonomy, and I think collaboration in a meaningful sense. And that's why in the past few years, I've really started working on change makers programs to try and develop a sort of second operating system that is more joy and potential driven,
mm.
because our organisations need it. I don't think anybody wants their college to be joyless.
No, no,
No,
no, no.
nobody wants that. But how do we climb out from under the weight of all of that bureaucratic stuff, which I know very well as a college governor, and I think we can only try and counter that by enabling each individual to, be able to bring, we're all about mastery, aren't we? Well, we need to be
Yes.
a little bit more equally about autonomy and purpose.
Wow, this is deep thinking.
I know, and I'm made up with cold. I'm quite impressed by myself here.
No, I was just thinking, yeah, I think, I was very fortunate coming into FE because after a few years we had action research, that thinking behind that of, trying something, having an idea of what I wanted to achieve, trying it out in a class, not giving up just because it seems a bit pear-shaped, and then building up on my reflective practice. I know I'm using a lot of terminology, but it's come about because when I first did it, I had no idea what it was called, if you know what I mean. I just tried it out, tried this out, and tried that out. And, what would happen if I started with questions? What would happen if I started questioning learners rather than telling learners? What would happen if I did this? What if I, and then I would think about it. And it was only, in actual fact, it's about 15 years that I realized that this is what reflective practice is. That's what it's called, and this is how you do it. I still feel like a novice when it comes to reflective practice, but I feel that could be a component that's missing out of the drive sort of engine, as it were. That the fact that you've also got to think about what you've done and think about how you might improve on it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think what the world needs is for people to be thinking for themselves, like
Oh wow.
100%. And I can't see, I mean, I would say this, wouldn't I? Because most of my career has been spent in FE, but I can't see any sector more with as much potential as FE to be able to support and enable citizens of the future. So our work is really important, and thinking for ourselves within that. And reflective practice, whatever we call it, it is just thinking about ourselves, in terms of our own practice. And it is research. And I think that FE research and the FE research wonderful grassroots networks are one of the most liberating vehicles for joy in FE that I can think of. Because LSRN, who is, I mean, there are a number of research networks, but LSRN are the ones I've been working with most recently. They've been around for years and years, actually, but they've got this new surge of sort of joy and life. And they don't try and control. They just bring people together.
Yes.
So you don't have to be working on like a master's program or anything like that. If you've got something that you want to think about, if you've got something that you want to research, come along and, talk to other people about it. And it's just really fascinating. And the energy, I'm not, I mean, full disclosure, I'm not part of LSRN. I'm not a convener or anything. I've just, recently done an online event with them, and I've been to like some of their conferences. And I come away absolutely fired up because I'm fired up, Toby, by other people's potential. So I might have come into, for example, to see you, and you might be talking about some quite detailed stuff to do with GCSE English, which is not my wheelhouse.
No.
But your drive, your purpose, your mastery of your pedagogy, your teaching, your whole approach will inspire me, even if I'm not going to go and teach GCSE English. Does that make sense? It's an energy.
Yes. I think what you're saying is it's not so much the subject, but it's the person and what they're thinking of at the moment and what they're doing at the moment that counts.
Yes, and I think it is, work is more joyful for all of us, isn't it? If we can be really into it. And I can remember the first day I worked at Northern College, and it was a residential college for adults. And I can remember going and sitting with somebody in the beautiful dining room at lunchtime. And it's college for working class people, and I'm a working class person. And there were two people on the table, a student and a teacher, and they were just chatting about Shakespeare. They weren't discussing an essay, or the student wasn't asking advice of the teacher. They'd been to see a play and they were chatting about it. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is just amazing. You are into what you do. And I think the day job can be so exhausting and battering in terms of the compliance side of things that sometimes we do forget the joy that got us there in the first place. Because none of us came into FE because we wanted to write a SAR or lead an Ofsted. We didn't, did we?
No, not at all.
I mean, I even used to love marking, to be honest. I used to really love it when I worked on like the Cert Ed PGC. I'd be so excited to see what people had put together. I used to, I would also always make sure there was enough time to really soak it up and enjoy it. But it is a sort of mindset, I think. It's really easy to get cynical and despondent. And just because you're not being cynical doesn't mean you can't still be critical about the circumstances which compel us to all have to work too hard. I'm not denying that. And I'm not here to say anybody should work harder, but we can work more joyfully, I think. Can I talk to you a little bit about microjoys? Because I've got a lovely little story for you. So one of the things we started talking about, and I think Joe Fletcher Saxon actually coined the term, with Joy FE, we started talking about microjoys, and I think it was we were getting stuck into lockdown, and that first excitement had gone, and actually it was starting to feel a bit tough, and probably most of us knew people who were sick and all of that. And we started to talk about what are the things, what are the microjoys in every day? Is it like a bird on your windowsill, or all of those things? Anyway, I was chatting the other day to a friend of mine, Kate Hazelgrove, who works at the University of Derby on teacher training programme. And she said, I just want you to know that I actually teach microjoys to trainee teachers. Like we teach it as part of the syllabus. And she said, everybody's gone out on the placements. And this one student trainee came back to me and said, there is no microjoy on this placement.
Oh, no.
And but if she hadn't heard the term, she might have just thought that's what it was like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And
so they got her a new placement. She's absolutely thriving. So I just want to do a shout out for Kate for telling me that story, and for Charlie, who used her potential to think, hang on a minute, this ain't right. I should be enjoying this more than I am. I should be finding these microjoys, even if it's a little bit tough, because I'm just learning and actually going back and doing something about it. And so having those concepts and that sort of switched onness to what it feels like to work joyfully and collaboratively in community, I think can just get us a long way in this world, which is actually, it's really tough, isn't it?
It is.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Hey teachers, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping in to tell you about Teachers Talk Connect 2026. We are back with our amazing big annual CPD and networking extravaganza in Manchester. It's on Saturday, the 14th of March, and tickets are completely free for teachers. Just head over to ttradio.org/Connect 2026 to grab your ticket today. We can't wait to see you there.
So I'm with Dr. Lou Mycroft, and we were discussing microjoys. Um, Lou, could you define them a little bit more? Where would well, what is a microjoy, and where would I find one?
Well, I can only give you examples, I think, from my own practice, because the point of a microjoy is that you have to find it yourself. So
Okay.
so nobody can tell you, if you're feeling like really miserable and somebody says, "Oh, look at that lovely rainbow," and you know that really they're saying cheer up a bit.
That's it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I will say, for example, that one of the things on the Green Changemakers programme, and I've got this from my work at Mycroft College and the Danish folk high school music movement, we always end with a song. And
Okay.
we just put something up on YouTube, and we sing. And when we finished the Kirklees Green Changemakers programme, it was my turn to choose, actually. We'd had some great songs. And I chose Something Inside So Strong by Labi Siffre.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what was joyful was we were just all in it. Like, some people knew the song, some people didn't know the song. You put like the karaoke version up on YouTube, so the lyrics come up. But it was just this wonderful moment of solidarity. We'd all been on a journey together. We'd come to like a pause point in that journey, and I won't forget that. But equally, another micro joy on that same course was the day when everybody brought in some tomato plant cuttings.
Okay.
I mean, we all went away with the same number of tomato plants potentially, but it was just so lovely that people had thought, "Oh, I've got some spare tomato plants. I'm going to take them to the..." Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is tuning into those moments and letting yourself experience and feel them, and then letting that carry you on to the thing you have to do that maybe takes a bit more courage. So,
Okay.
maybe standing up to somebody and saying, "Well, we shouldn't do it this way. We're not going to dumb this down. We're going to do it this way," or "I would prefer not to," or "I don't think that's right," or "that doesn't sit well with my values." I think joy actually drives that courage, because what it does is it helps us feel more hopeful that things can be a bit different.
I had a moment of joy this Friday. So, teaching 16 to 19-year-olds, there's always an aspect of behavior management. And this whole week, we've done mock exams. So they've been fairly, which was quite interesting for me, was that everybody was actually quite involved in doing their mock exam to the best of their abilities. And I say to the best of their abilities because I've been marking papers and seeing, wow, this is actually quite good, considering that, for the last 3 months, I've had to say, calm down, settle down, do your work, calm down, settle down, and repeat and repeat and repeat. But then on Friday, the week prior to Friday, I'd been inspired to teach a lesson on Victorian England. And while I was putting the materials together, I realized that Victorian England was a very tough time for the working class and for the poor. But what we'd had subsequently done is we'd enacted laws, the government had enacted laws that protected children and women and so on and working class people to some extent. But we'd shoved all those issues to foreign countries. So, the factories abroad are unprotected. There's no unions, there's no minimum wage, there's nothing to look after these poor people who are now making my shoes and sewing my jeans. And I thought, this is, if there's anything I'd liked the learners I teach on Friday, because I had a lesson on Friday, I thought, if there's anything I'd like them to pick up on, is this: So I showed, I went through the lesson with them, and they actually were interested in what I was talking about, and they were I'd asked them to do some research on what the housing situation was like, what the work situation was like, what it was like for young people. And they started sharing this, and I said, well, has it changed today? And they said, well, no, not really, it hasn't. And you know there's whereas back in those days children were put into were in gangs, street children and so on. We still have those today, and there's chicken shop grooming, and I was like, well, what is chicken shop grooming? Oh, well, explain. And people were telling me about what grooming was nowadays. The 16-year-old that was talking to me had more knowledge about the real world than I did. And I was getting very excited about it. And I thought, in a way, I still have it. I can still put together something and show it to a group of people, thinking, well, you might just see this as another lesson, but they actually got involved in what I had to say and what I had to show. And at the end, I said, well, what did you think of the lesson? And they said, well, we enjoyed it because it was very interactive. We actually had something to say about, the topic rather than you just talking about it. So that was my microjoy last week.
I think that's joys on lots of different levels, I think.
Okay.
Because I think absolutely that that professional joy of starting to look at one thing, so Victorian literature, and letting that take you somewhere else, that's a real professional joy, isn't it? And then the joy of knowing that that's connected with the students. But I think what's really interesting, so Spinoza was very clear that joy isn't like just being happy. Now we see like toxic positivity all around us, don't we? And everything is awesome and all of that. That's not joy. Joy comes from despair. It comes from pain. It comes from fear. It comes from loss. And it's how we, I suppose, compost the experiences that life gives us and still find the joy. That is joy. The fact that we've worked for it, we've worked to get it, and we're here, and we can, we might be going through a breakup, we might be going through, when my dad was dying, right, he had dementia.
Oh.
And he had vascular dementia. We looked at him, we were so lucky, we were able to look after him at home for the last sort of 6 months or so of his life. We had some right joyful moments. He was hilarious, to be honest, Toby, sometimes. I just used to I found a Sheffield Wednesday match where they'd won, and we just used to have that on for hours on end. And then, there was the one time when, like, at some point during this match, the other team did score, and he threw a banana at the TV. And I still think about that, and I'm glad of it. I feel so grateful that in my nature was that joyfulness, and that he then responded to, even though he wasn't maybe sure who I was or where he was or any of those things. And I think we can find those joyful moments, but we have to be, like Paul said something in the comments about he's always looking for the joyful elements of school life. And I replied that if you look for them, you will find them. But for many people, they're sick of not being heard. They're sick of like feeling a bit crushed. Work is somewhere that they just go, and it's such a shame. So the change makers work is really about how can we enable people to find that joy in themselves again. Not to make more money or for the achievement rates, though I do think there's probably a correlation between a joyful organisation and what comes out the other end. I see that at Chesterfield College. But, you know, because actually it's better for everybody if we can be surrounded by joyful potential people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And so this is what I was saying right at the start. When and it sounds incredible. I mean, I've been working for the same college for 25 years, and I had a comment once, going back a few years, 20 years ago, and a colleague of mine said to me, "Toby, you always have something positive to say about the college." And I thought, oh, I didn't know that about myself. You know, I am incredibly grateful for where I work, and I acknowledge that, you know, it's a hard job, it's incredibly difficult, it's very challenging. It's sometimes it's almost unbearable, but I really enjoy the challenge. I cherish the challenge. And I always think about the next step, the next move, and what I could be doing next to enhance, you know, myself, enhance my feelings, but also to enhance how the learners that I work with see my subject, if that makes sense. I want them. I would like somebody to say, actually, I can do well at this, and I can achieve this, and I'm going to work on it. And every year, I get a small number of learners who say, yes, I can achieve this. And what I'm working on is I'm trying to ask them to share that with others, so that we've got, I mean, there's one learner that comes to mind who's not even, it's not somebody that I teach, but it's somebody that I meet, and we talk together. And he's such an inspiration to everybody, to all the students, and I think inspiration to teachers as well, because of his can-do attitude and how he wants to succeed and how he wants to achieve. And it's a very powerful force. It's almost like gravity. You can't see it, but it drags you, it pulls you in, it does things, it helps you to achieve things.
No, it really does.
Yeah.
And we, I don't mean to sound woo woo here, but it is an energy. It
Yes.
gives us energy. And it's an energy that, you and I had a chat online the other day, didn't we? Just to, talk through really the technicalities of coming on the show. And I went away buzzing from that conversation. And it was like 10 minutes because we are both joyful people.
Yes.
And I think that it's become almost fashionable to be cynical. I do feel the tide is turning a little bit. But I don't know what sort of school you went to, Toby, but I went to a school where, like, you got bullied for being clever.
Yes.
So,
I found that in this country. Yeah.
Yes. So you got bullied for being clever. You were like, in Yorkshire, they'd call you boff, like boffing. And so you would try not to be so clever. And in order to, there's an old saying, like, what's it called? Hide your light under a bushel.
Yeah.
So you learn not to shine in so many ways. And I think so many young people come into FE, having learned not to shine at school, perhaps because they weren't like, the usual suspects of the favourites or whatever. And how can we create the conditions where we enable people to shine in whatever way it is? Are you the kindest person in class? Are you the person that always, I don't know, make sure the lights are turned on, or it's not always about being the cleverest, is it? It's not always about achieving the highest grades. But if you feel good about yourself in that space, and I think that's very much what we do. And on the Green Changemakers, we work with a piece of research that comes out of the NHS, actually.
Right.
Helen Bevan and others. And what this research shows is that 3% of a workforce can actually influence 85% of their colleagues, affirmatively, joyfully, if you like. That the tipping point for culture change is actually around 25%.
Wow.
But that,
Okay.
which is not huge, and we work really intentionally with those numbers. But that there is 15% of that workforce, you're never going to reach them. So don't waste your time. And I think certainly I've done a lot of talks at staff development days and workshops and all of that stuff. And I would say it's about right, because there's always 15% of people stood at the back with their arms folded.
Yeah.
And I used to worry about reaching them. No, let's not. Let's really work at reaching that 85%, whether it's students or staff, and switching them on to their own joy.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD-accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Hey teachers, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping in to tell you about Teachers Talk Connect 2026. We are back with our amazing big annual CPD and networking extravaganza in Manchester. It's on Saturday the 14th of March and tickets are completely free for teachers. Just head over to ttradio.org/Connect 2026 to grab your ticket today. We can't wait to see you there.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Schools Week says the government must decide whether to cut teacher numbers and close schools or increase per pupil funding as the number of children entering the system declines. The report comes following analysis by the Institute for Fiscal Studies, which says the number of children under 16 in England is due to decline by 6% over the next decade. The think tank says the government has so far chosen to protect total school spending in real terms up to 2029, but it points out that policymakers will need to decide whether this remains the right judgment as pupil numbers continue to fall. The IFS report found that during previous historic reductions in pupil numbers, policymakers made what it calls different choices. For example, when pupil numbers fell in the 1970s and 80s, there were cuts to teacher numbers. In the 2000s, when pupil numbers declined, there were actually increases in the number of teachers. A researcher for the IFS said that whilst closing a school can be problematic for local communities, maintaining school numbers as they are might not be the best for pupils either, as some schools might struggle to offer a full breadth of curriculum. The TES magazine says that teacher recruitment is turning a corner and that positive ITT data should be welcomed by the sector after a decade of grim recruitment stats. The article says that this year's census shows just over 32,000 people starting initial teacher training, an 11% rise on last year. Crucially, 99% of the postgraduate target has been met, up from 69% the year before. Recruitment to STEM subjects has exceeded the target for the first time since targets were introduced in 2019, with physics up 36%, computing up 44%, and maths up 16%. Across secondary subjects from art and design to PE have met or surpassed goals. Secondary recruitment overall still falls short of the overall target, but the direction of travel is positive. The article cites the role of financial incentive and says increased bursaries and the expansion of postgraduate teaching apprenticeships have widened access. Pay rises have also mattered. A better narrative about teaching is also emerging. Bridget Phillipson talks about it as a career alongside medicine, public leadership and social service, as work that shapes communities. Speaking positively about the profession, the data suggests, makes all the difference. Schools Week reports on a new legal duty that will be introduced for councils to notify schools when a child is placed in temporary accommodation. This was announced as part of the government's child poverty strategy. Statistics suggest that around 31% of children in the UK are living in relative poverty, with more than 172,000 children living in temporary accommodation in England. The notifications would go to health visitors and GPs alongside schools, which government says would help agencies provide extra support. For schools, this could be extra pastoral support, breakfast clubs, after-school activities and homework clubs. The long-term ambition of the strategy is to reduce the number of days lost at school for children living in temporary accommodation. For full details and union reaction, see Schools Week. LBC says family hubs across the country will have a dedicated SEND specialist. The Best Start hubs will offer a range of support to local communities, such as speech and language sessions for toddlers, specialist parent groups and baby groups. Councils are being asked to recruit the specialists for each of the 1,000 family hubs being rolled out from April next year. The Department for Education also announced councils will have to prioritise the neighbourhoods most in need for family hubs to access their share of £500 million being invested into the hubs. It has set an ambition for 70% of the hubs to be located in the most disadvantaged 30% of communities. Funding for SEND interventions in the hubs will be confirmed in due course and will be in addition to the £500 million for the hub rollout. More details on LBC online. Finally, in Scotland, the Daily Record reveals the country's top secondary schools, and there is a new winner. Douglas Academy was crowned top of the league with 91% of pupils leaving with 5 or more national fives, 81% with 5 or more Highers, and 34% with 2 or more advanced Highers. This is a 5-place rise since last year in the league table. One school is reported to have leapt an impressive 61 places up the table since last year. The 10 best schools for academic excellence are also listed, as well as other awards for Best Scottish Independent Secondary School. Full details on the Daily Record website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
And we're back. Oh, wow, what a meaningful conversation we've had today, Lou. I'm so grateful that you're here. I've got a small question now. We're about to end the show. What's your freshest thinking?
I love that question. That is such a thinking environment question.
Yeah.
I am inspired by Kate and her trainee Charlie. If we don't talk about joy, how do we ever expect to find it? Yeah, I think that's my freshest thinking. What's your freshest thinking, Toby?
Earlier this evening, I was watching, for the very first time, a video game competition on television. And I thought, do you know what? Having watched, it was live play between 2 teams fighting it out to get to the championship. And I thought, if this is what young people are watching nowadays, I don't stand a chance as an educator. But having spoken about joy, I think young people are bombarded with instant gratification and dopamine hits. But I'm hoping that, the implementation of joy seeds and, having people work on them, watering them, letting them flourish and grow will take precedence over, finding pleasure in instant moments. And that's my freshest thinking.
That's wonderful. That's a great place for us to finish, Toby, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. Lou, thank you so much for being on my show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope to see you in real life, as they put it, IRL, in shortly.
Yes, I hope so too.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting me, Toby.
Not at all, not at all. It's the end of the year, guys, so I'm wishing you, a happy Christmas and a wonderful new year full of joy. This is me, Toby Doncaster, with Lou Mycroft. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Lou.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.